To this day, the names Little Boy and Fat Man still haunt the people of Japan, as these were the two atomic bombs that took the lives of over 214,000 individuals. And Godzilla, the monster endowed with destructive power, is a symbol created by the Japanese to represent the catastrophic annihilation they endured. Godzilla Minus One, a film that has received high praise from global media, left me so contemplative that even after the movie ended, I remained seated, motionless. It poses the question, after the war, do soldiers truly return home, or do their souls forever remain on the battlefield? What exactly does the monster Godzilla represent? And faced with a disaster that pushes a nation to the brink of extinction, can humanity unite to fight back, or will they surrender to fate? Welcome back to Movie Honey. Today, let's travel back in time to 1945 to the war-ravaged, devastated city of Tokyo, where unfortunate lives cling to each other for survival and confront the terrifying nightmare from the deep sea known as Godzilla. To analyze all aspects, I will reveal most of the movie's content, so consider this a spoiler alert for everyone. Now, let's get started. In 1945, as World War II neared its end, kamikaze pilot Koichi Shikishima had requested to land his malfunctioning airplane at a military base on Odo Island. After inspecting the engine and finding no faults, the chief mechanic, Tachibana, suspected that Koichi had faked the malfunction to avoid a suicide mission for his country. That night, a dinosaur-like creature, locally called Godzilla, suddenly attacked the garrison, killing all the mechanics on the island. Witnessing this, Koichi was paralyzed with fear. Despite Tachibana's cries, Koichi could not fire a single shot from the aircraft's machine gun. Enraged by Koichi's cowardice, Tachibana blamed him for the tragic fate of all their comrades on the island. Returning home after the war, Koichi faced the grief of losing his parents and the reproach of his neighbor, Sumiko Oda, as their entire neighborhood lay in ruins from American bombing raids. Torn by guilt, Koichi decided to take on the job of locating and disposing of unexploded ordnance in the sea. During this time, he took in Noriko and the orphan child Akiko, both of whom had lost family members to the bombings. The US nuclear bomb testing at Bikini Atoll led to Godzilla mutating, growing larger, and becoming more powerful. Shortly thereafter, it repeatedly attacked US warships, causing severe casualties. Concerned about tensions with the Soviet Union in the Pacific, the US decided against offering any aid and requested Japan to eliminate the monster. Meanwhile, fearing that Godzilla's appearance would cause widespread panic, Japanese senior leadership suppressed the information and did not inform the public. In May 1947, Koichi and his minesweeping team were tasked with preventing Godzilla from advancing further into Japanese territory. Although they successfully detonated a mine that caused significant injury to the monster's mouth, the situation became futile. It had the ability to heal its wounds. At a critical moment, the heavy cruiser Takao appeared and engaged in combat. Despite superior firepower, they were unprepared for Godzilla's own destructive weapon. From its wide-open mouth, Godzilla uses atomic breath, obliterating the Takao. Quickly after, Godzilla attacked the Ginza district where Noriko was working. Miraculously surviving the initial assault, she encountered Koichi amidst the panicked crowd. However, provoked by tank fire, Godzilla again used its atomic breath, annihilating the entire area and resulting in tens of thousands of deaths. Facing this situation, Noriko quickly pushed Koichi into an adjacent alley while she was blown away by the shockwave from the explosion. Disappointed by the indifference of the authorities, Noda Kenji, a former naval engineer and member of the minesweeping team, devised a plan to neutralize Godzilla by decreasing its buoyancy and submerging it in the deep Sagami Bay. The plan was to submerge Godzilla at a depth of 1,500 meters, where the pressure would be immense. If the plan failed, they would use large flotation bags to bring it back to the surface, causing the sudden change in pressure to injure the creature. To execute the plan, they called on veterans from the naval forces to man the available destroyers. Koichi, meanwhile, was tasked with piloting an aircraft to to lure Godzilla to the designated area. Thus, he sought the help of mechanic Tachibana, a survivor of the Odo Island from Godzilla's attack, to repair the long-neglected plane. As a former pilot of the kamikaze Divine Wind Forces, Koichi planned to load the plane with bombs and explosives and crash directly into Godzilla's mouth as it surfaced from the ocean. Before departing, he entrusted his adoptive daughter Akiko to the care of neighbor Sumiko Oda. Despite numerous challenges, Godzilla was eventually destroyed as planned. When everyone thought Koichi had perished in the mission, they discovered he had managed to parachute to safety because Tachibana had fitted the seat with an ejector, ensuring Koichi's survival. Upon returning home, Koichi was surprised to learn that Noriko was still alive. Immediately, he carried Akiko and rushed to the hospital, where the family reunited after the ordeal. However, the battle was not over yet, as Godzilla was beginning to regenerate from the remnants of its flesh on the ocean floor. Before delving into the analysis of the film, it's important to understand what the kamikaze squadrons of the Japanese military meant during World War II. By mid-1944, as the Allied forces were gaining the upper hand in the European front, similar developments were occurring in the Asia-Pacific theater. At that time, even Japan, which had not yet suffered extensive war damage, had few who believed they could emerge victorious. Therefore, to overcome the fear of having to surrender unconditionally to the overwhelming firepower of the tightening noose of American battleships, Captain Motoharu Okamura proposed the radical idea of suicide warfare known as kamikaze. Essentially, the High Command believed that by inflicting heavy losses on the Allied forces, they could negotiate better terms after the war ended. Thus, the concept of suicide planes crashing directly into enemy ships was born on June 5, 1944. To achieve maximum effectiveness in airstrikes, each plane was equipped with a 250 kilograms bomb, and the pilots needed to accurately target their impact to inflict maximum casualties. If executed correctly, a single aircraft could potentially sink an aircraft carrier. This meant that the survival rate for pilots in the kamikaze squadrons was nearly zero. Okamura assured the command that Japanese men would be willing to sacrifice themselves for the chance to save their country. To reinforce this belief, the Japanese military heavily propagated that joining the kamikaze squadron was a source of pride not only for the individual, but also for their family. Thus, when it was discovered that Koichi lied about his plane malfunctioning and needing to land for repairs, the chief mechanic Tachibana scorned the young pilot, and even at home, his neighbor Sumiko chastised him, believing that the kamikaze squadron was crucial in preventing the terrible air raids by the American forces on Tokyo. I once read somewhere that you can take the soldier out of the war, but you can't take the war out of the soldier, and Koichi was no exception. He tried to appear normal, but in reality, he had never lived a fully peaceful day. Each night, Koichi was tormented by nightmares, which took him back to the past, where his comrades fell one by one. This torment made him constantly try to hide his past and withdraw into himself. As a pilot in the kamikaze forces, fearing death was considered a disgrace, and surviving was seen as cowardice. Koichi was afraid of the affection Noriko had for him and did not dare to marry her. He would not allow Akiko to call him father because he felt unworthy. To many, each day alive is a gift, but for Koichi, it seemed more like a vague dream. When Noriko expressed her wish that he not risk his life clearing mines at sea, Koichi became angry and replied that it was the only job he could do. It is a painful truth to realize how difficult it is for soldiers like Koichi to integrate into everyday life. Without formal qualifications or professional skills, their expertise lies in fighting, handling explosives, and facing death. In many letters sent home by kamikaze pilots that have been made public, many shared their bitter feelings about their inevitable death. They did not feel glory or pride, rather, they felt forced into sacrifice by orders. This absurdity became an obsession, causing soldiers to deeply despise the war. Koichi was no different. He did not fear death, but he feared his death would be meaningless. Only when facing Godzilla did he realize that his sacrifice could ensure Akiko lived in peace. Therefore, he did not hesitate to propose a plan to pilot a kamikaze aircraft to destroy the monster. The image of Koichi crashing his plane into Godzilla's mouth at the end of the film conveyed a multitude of complex emotions at the same moment, while also opening up to layers of meaning. The first layer of meaning, Koichi's action stems from a desire to protect those he truly loves rather than simply following orders. He wanted Akiko to grow up in a better world, wanted to shield his friends from a cataclysmic disaster, and wanted to do the right thing for his fallen comrades. The second layer of meaning, Koichi's sacrificial act helped him fulfill his duty as a pilot in the kamikaze squadron, serving as atonement for abandoning his people and comrades during the war. For this reason, the former sailors saluted in military fashion to show respect and gratitude to the kamikaze pilots. A radiant smile finally appeared on Koichi's lips, now reborn and free from the shadows of the war. Unlike the Godzilla we know from the MonsterVerse, the image of Godzilla in Japanese popular culture intertwined with the pain of loss and the haunting presence of nuclear weapons. Among Koichi's peers, only the inexperienced Shiro was excited about the war, wishing it would last longer so he could participate, which angered Koichi. War is not a game, it's not a proud story to boast about or show off courage. In reality, it is a haunting experience that no one wants to face, so when Shiro was eager to join the operation to destroy Godzilla, Captain Yoji and Dr. Noda made him stay behind. They didn't see him as a coward, but rather because he was luckier than all his predecessors. Shiro represents the future generation, the ones who will rebuild the country from the ashes, unlike the young men who have died senselessly on the battlefield. Godzilla -1 beautifully connects the nuclear disaster that Japan had to endure. As Godzilla's attack on the Ginza district culminates with an explosion from its atomic breath, it becomes a metaphor for the two bombs dropped on Hiroshima and Nagasaki. Before being defeated in Asia, Japan prided itself as the foremost nation. It all started with the Meiji Restoration, which took place from 1866 to 1869. The revolution transformed Japan from a feudal nation into one with a capitalist economy, avoiding the fate of becoming a colony or semi-colony like other countries of the era. From there, Japan entered a period of strong development and rose to become a military power after defeating Russia in 1905. The atomic bombs reduced the country to zero. From a superpower, they were left with nothing but ruins, desolation, and pain. This partly explains why the film is titled Godzilla -1, as Godzilla represents the fear and despair that oppress the hearts of the Japanese people every day. Not only abandoned by Western nations due to fears of escalating tensions in the Cold War, but the people were also ignored by their own government. This irresponsibility and bureaucracy pushed the country to less than zero, a -1. Many articles and interviews have discussed the consequences of the war. The movie Godzilla was released in 1954, just 9 years after the atomic disaster, becoming Japan's first strong reaction to the pain of those years. In recent years, the country has also faced natural disasters, such as earthquakes and tsunamis, severely affecting the lives of the people, making Godzilla -1 a connection to reality by addressing the issue of natural disasters and how to deal with them. The film criticizes the authorities by addressing their bureaucratic attitude towards disaster. Godzilla's devastation of the Ginza district becomes a metaphor for the indifferent, careless, and irresponsible attitude that can lead to severe consequences. Compared to the 2016 film Shin Godzilla, which also revolves around a similar theme, Godzilla -1 goes a step further by depicting the citizens as more independent, no longer reliant on authorities. Instead, each individual's responsibility towards their community is emphasized as they unite to confront the crisis, thus broadening the meaning of heroism among the people. True heroes don't always need to perform grand gestures. They don't need to carry weapons to defend their nation on the battlefield, nor do they need to pilot kamikaze planes against the enemy. Real heroes are those who stand up to fight for what they believe is right. Whether they are ordinary citizens or unsung heroes forgotten by history, their actions still bring hope for a brighter tomorrow. Just 2 years after the war, the devastated country is showing signs of recovery. In the scene where Godzilla attacks the Ginza district, we see skyscrapers quickly reconstructed and rebuilt. However, the greatest resilience lies in the mutual support and unity among people. Most characters we meet, like Koichi, Noriko, Akiko, and Sumiko, have lost family members in the war. Despite having no blood relations, Koichi does not abandon Noriko and Akiko. He takes them in as his own family, willing to undertake life-threatening work to ensure Akiko has a fulfilling life. Although he never explicitly stated it, Koichi regarded Akiko as his daughter. He smiled happily upon seeing the painting she gifted him and felt profound sorrow witnessing their separation again when Noriko was thought to be dead. Perhaps Koichi, too, yearned for a home of his own. He worked diligently, saving and building a comfortable house for his family. Despite this, the haunting memories of war clung to him, creating a barrier between him and others. The scene where their neighbor Sumiko brings rice to him and Noriko is particularly moving. Despite her resentment and blame towards Koichi, Sumiko could not bear to see Akiko go hungry. She was willing to part with her precious white rice, a commodity as valuable as gold at the time, to ensure Koichi could care for the child. Sumiko recognized that children like Akiko are the future of the country. They are innocent and do not deserve such misfortune. This gesture helped forge a supportive community that protected one another, making a real difference. The moment Koichi reunites with Noriko in the hospital is layered with meaning. If Godzilla represents Koichi's past sins, the film's conclusion transforms this, marking a truly happy ending as he overcomes his nightmares and moves forward to build a joyful life for himself. On the other hand, the family of three Koichi, Noriko, and Akiko symbolizes the future of Japan, a longing for happiness and a peaceful life free from the shadows of the past. The pain has not disappeared, but it no longer touches them. This is the central theme that Godzilla -1 aims to convey. No matter how dark and tragic the past, we can always change and move towards hope and happiness. There is a perplexing detail at the end of the film, a dark mark on Noriko's neck when she reunites with Koichi in the hospital. Director Yamazaki Takashi offers no explanation, leading to speculation that it might be a consequence of radiation related to Godzilla. Some believe that the dark mark indicates a disease or a contagion linked to the creature, and that Noriko's fate will be tragically sealed. However, film critic Chris Lambert has a completely different view. He suggests that after the catastrophic explosion in Ginza, Noriko's survival was nearly impossible. The imagery of Godzilla regenerating deep under the sea might relate to the dark mark on Noriko's neck, suggesting that she somehow shares the monster's regenerative abilities, thus establishing a connection between Noriko and Godzilla. In previous Japanese Godzilla films, the character Miki Shigusa often appears. As a psychic, Miki has the ability to communicate with Godzilla, thereby controlling the monster or directing it to follow her commands. Therefore, a character connected to Godzilla is not a rarity in films from the land of the rising sun, and it seems Noriko might have this ability. Godzilla -1 is not just a typical monster movie. It is a story about humanity and a nation's ability to recover after war. Despite its modest budget, the film has made significant impacts both domestically and internationally, offering both entertainment and a profoundly touching narrative. In the warm sunlight, these unfortunate lives find each other to start a new chapter together.